welcome back to a very special episode of The Jake Williams Show. I am talking about the finale of Game of Thrones, talking about pretty much how I felt about the whole final season, but I will not be doing it alone. I will be joined by former co-host Derek Watson.
Woo!
Oh man, blew out my eardrums there.
Well, it's good to be back, Jake. I've really missed you.
Yeah, just like old times. And if you miss hearing Derek, don't worry, he'll be here again about a month later, a little over a month from now. It's going to be the 1-year anniversary of Loud and Opinionated. We're going to do a special episode. I don't know what it's going to be about. We're still working that out, so it'll be exciting. That's for sure. So let's talk about Game of Thrones. Neither of us have talked about this to each other yet, and this is what's exciting about this because
No.
you don't really.
It's gonna be raw.
You don't really voice your opinions about this stuff, really anywhere because you don't really use social media anymore. But it's
I know. I'm that guy.
I'm excited. I want to know because we're not going to spend the whole time talking about this. This is mostly going to be focused on, how we felt about the final episode of the show ever.
Sure.
I just want to know.
Isn't that weird?
Yes.
I just want to take a second to appreciate how weird it is that Game of Thrones is over.
Yeah, it's crazy. That is 10 years of your life. It's just gone, just like that. But I want to know how did you feel about this season?
Well, overall, I was a bit disappointed. I know that a lot of other people are feeling the same way. I thought that there were a lot of cool moments. There was a lot of great cinematography. Some of the storylines, I think they ended perfectly. The Hound in the Mountain, I loved the way that ended. I thought it was just beautiful and perfect. But overall, it felt like they were really rushing through it. Like they just had a bunch of bullet points of things that they needed to get done, and they were just knocking them out one by one. And it didn't feel like a very fluid story. It felt like way faster paced than normal, and I don't know. Maybe it was just the buildup of all these seasons of wondering what was going to happen, and now actually seeing it, it just wasn't quite what I expected it to be. But there were some things that I really did like, so I don't want to completely poo-poo it. It was still Game of Thrones, but I think the last season was far better than this season, like season 7. So.
Yeah, I agree to some extent. I do feel like it felt rushed. I think they should have, instead of 6 episodes, they should have had, I would say probably 8. I feel like 2 more episodes of Dany's turn to where she was. I think
that was a big thing.
That was so fast. That was such a thing. And
well, really, they could have done a full 10-episode season, I think. And I don't know if this is true, but I was told that the HBO offered them 10 episodes and the writers declined it and said that they're going to do it in 6. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if that's true or not, but if it is, then I think they really messed up there because, that was really rushed. The biggest disappointment for me was the battle with the undead. To me, just felt like such a letdown, considering that was what was being built up since the very first scene of the entire show, was leading to this battle, and it was just a massive disappointment to me. And I thought they could have made that last 2 episodes. I think that they should have carried that story on a little bit longer. It was, and the way that he died was just so lame and fast. I mean, it was cool that Arya did it, and it looked badass, and she was flying through the air at him, but it's just one stab and he's gone. There was no hand-to-hand combat with him. He had a couple cool moments, but that was just that was the biggest disappointment to me, was that episode and that whole battle.
Yeah, I agree with you. You said it before I was going to. I honestly thought, if this is the final season, why not? And say you did go with the approach of more episodes, why not make that battle 2 episodes? Because, I mean, that is arguably the biggest moment of the series, and I feel like you could have done a little bit more. About with HBO, I heard originally they wanted to do 10 seasons, and then they said D&D as they're called online. They said no, we could do it in 8, and then I think that's right where HBO was like, well, just okay, so we'll do 8 seasons, 10 episodes, and they said no, we want to do 6 and 6 and make them longer. Which I think, last season you didn't really feel it, but this season really felt it, and maybe it was because, like you said, maybe it was that time from season 7 to season 8 that really made us think about it, because we had a year worth of speculation and build up, and I think that hurt it. And I saw a suggestion where like they could have still had Arya do what she did, but it would have been much cooler moment if the Night King and Jon were like having a sword fight, and then she jumps in and does that.
Yeah,
that would be such a better moment. That would have been so awesome.
100% agree. Like, I could not believe that there was no like awesome hand-to-hand combat scene with the Night King. Like, it was cool when he got all the undead to raise up. That was awesome, but that was really the only cool thing. And the dragon fight was kind of cool for as much as you could see it, because it was so dark and fast. I mean, and that's another thing about that episode. It was so dark the whole time. I understand that it was night, but there are things you can do cinematically to make it easier to see what's going on. It's hard to follow.
Yeah.
There were some really cool moments in it, though. I loved when that girl, I can never remember her name, when she killed the giant and like died. That was.
Isn't she a Mormont?
I think so. That sounds right.
Her death was awesome.
Yeah.
I really liked her death. That was really
that part was cool. The scene where Arya was kind of creeping through those shells with all the White Walkers around her, and she had to be really quiet and like silently kill them. That was awesome. But yeah.
And I think I get where people are coming from, because I understand where people could be upset, and we'll kind of talk about a little bit more about people that are upset that are stupid. Because there are people like that. But I understand why people are upset, and I think there are valid criticisms of this season. But even with those criticisms, they, like you said, there's still those moments where like, this is really cool, this is really awesome.
Yeah.
This is why I'm still watching. This is why I still care about it.
Jon riding the dragon.
Yeah, and the dragon fight in that episode was really cool, and I really liked the attention to detail to where you see his chunk of his neck get bit off.
Yeah.
And if you look closely, you can see flames coming out of that part of his neck.
Yeah, I did. I didn't see that watching it, but I saw clips of it on the internet later.
Yeah, I was like, that's awesome that they took the time to think about that. But so yeah, that's kind of our thoughts. The other big episode that I want to briefly talk about before we get into this one, the penultimate episode, The Bells.
Mm-hmm.
What did you feel about that episode?
Man, that was a tough one. It was hard to watch. I saw something that was kind of funny before I really get into it. There was an article in the Omaha World Herald about how since the start of Game of Thrones, 3,500 girls have been named Daenerys, and that all of their parents are heavily regretting that after that episode.
Yeah.
Because they basically named their kid after the Game of Thrones version of Hitler. Because that was pure evil. It was horrific to watch. I thought that was the most impressive episode of the season. Just the way that you got to follow Arya through like the madness and hell that was happening. I mean, the cinematography was amazing, and it was so gruesome and horrible. Like it really made you feel sick because it was so real looking.
And when I was watching that episode, I truly felt like Tyrion in that moment, because when the bells rang, I knew it wasn't going to happen, but I had that little bit of belief that, okay, she's going to bring it back, she's going to calm down, and then it just happens, and you're like,
yeah,
damn.
I mean, I get chills like thinking about it. It was so bad. And it's funny, Rochelle, my fiance now, she had never watched any Game of Thrones before this season, but she watched all the episodes with me.
Binged it.
She got invested in this season. Yeah. Well, no, she just watched this season, so she hasn't seen anything before the final season, right? So as we were watching, I would like kind of pause and then quickly explain to her like the stories that were going on and important things. And I think I did a pretty good job of summing up a lot of it. So by the end, she pretty much understood what was going on. But the thing that I couldn't stress enough during that episode was Daenerys was the ultimate good character in everyone's eyes for for most of the show. Like, people loved her before, this season happened, and how she was freeing people, freeing the slaves, and how, like, she was going to be the rightful queen and make the world a better place. And then to watch her do that, keep thinking about how you felt about her 3, 4 seasons ago, it's just astounding, like, the pit in your stomach that you got during that. So like I said, I think that was the most impressive thing that they did in the show this season, although it was hard to watch.
Yeah, and I think as much as I liked that episode and liked that turn, and I agree that it was still very impactful because you still out of the other seasons. But again, I think that if they had just a few more episodes of her turning into that, it would have been even more effective.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because it felt like it went from one episode to the next. She went from kind of on edge to completely batshit crazy, like overnight, and that was
Yeah.
that was not it's just not typical Game of Thrones. Usually they really draw things out and things fester for a while before anything actually happens. So it is a very different pace.
Yeah, but the way that I look at it, with all that stuff, to me it makes sense, and it does because of the condensed nature of it. It doesn't feel as organic, but I mean throughout the show she had done some questionable things, even though she was the
Sure.
good guy, right? But that's what everybody was doing in Game of Thrones. That's kind of the point of it. Is there's always these gray areas, but
yeah, like even Ned Stark had to execute people,
right.
And he did it himself.
But with her, to me, it makes sense because Missandei just got decapitated. She just lost one of her kids. She just lost one of her most loyal and trusted knights. So all those things happening back to back to back, and then all the stuff that she's lost before that, and her journey to this point, it to me it does work. But again, I can understand how people don't think it does. But I'm like, well, this was kind of calculated beforehand. I mean, if this stuff happened to me and I had that much power, I don't know what I would do.
I mean, I wouldn't kill millions of people.
No, I wouldn't either.
Women and children. I definitely wouldn't do that. But and I think you're right. It's not surprising given her family lineage and all the things that happened, but it still happened, a lot of it, very quickly.
Yeah.
And that's what just felt weird. You didn't really have time to digest it before it happened. And it was, oh my God, it was ridiculous.
So yeah, we touched on that.
And I will say there was one thing that I thought Jon made such a huge mistake in my opinion, and I said it when it happened, and then the further it went along, the more I agreed with it. He should have just waited until after all the wars were over to talk to Daenerys about like his his rightful, because if he had waited, I don't think she would have gone as crazy. I mean, maybe because a lot of other stuff happened, but I think it was right before you're going to the battle of the century, and then before you have to go into another war. It seems like that's the kind of thing that you need to just table that until you deal with this other stuff.
Yeah, but I also think that he, along with all the other characters, thought they were going to die at the Battle of Winterfell. I think he thought.
Well, then they just die. Then what's?
Yeah, that's true.
Why does he need to get bad off?
Yeah. I mean, you take it to the grave.
Who does it? Yeah, who does it help?
Yeah,
it helps nobody.
All right, so let's move to the final episode of the season of the series, and we kind of touched on Dany's Mad Queen arc, and we'll kind of touch on that there. But let me ask you, what were your thoughts of the series finale?
Well, I think it wasn't all that exciting. It was at the point where I almost felt obligated to watch it all. And you're curious to see what's going to happen. I didn't see it coming that they were going to select Bran the Broken. After I thought about it, when it happened, it wasn't completely shocking. I am glad they didn't make Jon king at the end, because that felt like it would have been too Hollywood. So I'm glad that they didn't go that route. I really liked the scene where Jon killed Daenerys. I'm glad he confronted her, and the part with the dragon melting the Iron Throne, I think, was really poetic and awesome.
I think that scene was probably the best scene of this season because of all of the symbolism and all of the weight you felt from all the other seasons play out here, because Dany's finally at the Iron Throne. She finally got to where she wanted, and just to have that moment. And then even before he gets in there, that was really cool when they had Drogon like guarding pretty much. And
Yeah.
you just see this thing and you're like, what's that? And then he just shakes off like the snow or ash or whatever it is. He shakes it off.
It's definitely Ash.
Yeah.
That's dead bodies.
And when he just shakes it off and looks at Jon like, oh, I know you can go kind of thing. That was such a cool thing.
Mm-hmm.
But then the fact where she finally sees it and she touches it and is like, that was such a cool, impactful moment. And then when she's still like being nice to Jon and he just straight up doesn't like, I thought he was going to play into it a little bit and be sweet about it, but then he's just like, no, you just killed all those people. What's up? Like he immediately just like calls her out like, whoa, we did not agree to this.
And it was well done too, because they also played, you could tell that he was heartbroken at the same time as angry. Because they tried to make you.
He really did love her.
Yeah, they tried to really make you feel like maybe he would be blind to what she did, even though there's just no way that Jon Snow could do that. But yeah, that scene, I agree. I think that was the best overall scene in the season. One thing I hadn't really thought a whole lot about, when Drogon was coming and found out that Daenerys was dead, I was like, oh God, Jon, you need to run away. He's gonna kill you.
Yeah, I thought.
Not thinking about the fact that he is a dragonborn, so the fire wouldn't have killed him.
Yeah,
I would assume, because he's able to ride the dragons.
Yeah, and I think that was my thought too when he didn't attack him. I was like, oh, well, the dragon knows he's Targaryen, so the dragon's not going to mess with him. He's just going to be upset and be mad about it. But yeah, I was saying the same thing, like, oh, he's Targaryen, he won't mess with him.
Yeah.
Before that scene, though,
I'm surprised Grey Worm didn't kill him, though.
Yeah, we'll get to that. I think that overall, I really enjoyed the episode. I thought it was a good end for me. I thought it was enough. I was like, you know what? Coming out of it, I wasn't upset with it. And to be honest, I wasn't even that hard on this season. I didn't hate this season as much as other people did. I thought it was okay. I agree with you that it didn't have the same quality as the season before it. But the scene before that felt like classic Game of Thrones, where Tyrion is trying to convince Jon Snow to kill Dany. That was such a good scene.
Yeah.
Because there was two really good actors just having a dialogue, and that's some of my favorite stuff. Is when, say what you will about the writers of the show, but I think their dialogue is fantastic. And
I agree.
Yeah. Love is the duty of death. Death is the duty of love. Like that exchange back and forth. That was so good. That was like classic Game of Thrones. And I'm sure a lot of people were with me on this, but when Tyrion says all these things and Jon saw what Dany did and he still was like, well, she's still my queen. And I love the part where Tyrion's like, well, what about your sisters? And then that was when Jon was like, oh yeah, she's totally going to kill my sister.
Yeah.
No. Kill her now.
No, Jake, she's going to liberate them.
Yeah. And that speech was great. I really liked the speech.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as you said from Winterfell to Dorne, I'm like, wait, hold up. They were on your. Oh, she's gonna murder them too. That's what I.
She's gonna murder. She's gonna murder everybody.
Yeah, they're all screwed. So after all that stuff, this is where I think the episode starts to dip in quality when we do the council scene, because while I don't necessarily hate the scene, a lot of it doesn't really make sense because.
It was very weird.
Why wouldn't Jon be like, okay, Drogon doesn't kill him and flies away with Dany, but what is stopping the Unsullied and the Dothraki to kill him?
Yeah.
Like, why would they all of a sudden be like, well, we're going to take him prisoner when, like, beforehand they were just
killing everybody.
Yeah, exactly. So that, to me, was pretty dumb. And then why does Tyrion get a say in the choice of the king? And my only explanation for that is he's the only living Lannister left.
Yeah, I think that's why they brought him in. Also, that they all knew Tyrion and knew him to be, intelligent and the most reasonable of the Lannisters. So I think it's partially the respect of that family, just in the Six Kingdoms now, but also them just knowing him. But I it was it was all weird. It just felt like, okay, what just happened? Like all of a sudden we're all just hanging out and you guys are gonna decide who's ruling so peacefully.
I mean, I like to give the show props for subverting expectations and killing Danny a lot earlier than I expected. But I kind of would have rather had them scheming as a council about what to do after Danny, and then the moment with John, and then we kind of figured out that way. Because by the
I think you would have needed more episodes to do that.
right, you probably
Yeah.
would have needed like 1 or 2 episodes. Um, but yeah, I just the council scene. Although I liked it and it was nice to see those characters again. I mean, some people say it was fan service. Yeah, it was a little bit, but it was nice to see all those characters around and together again. Um, there's some parts that were weird where like Grey Worm's like, shut up, and they're like, well, yeah, I should shut up, but I'm gonna talk anyway. And then I don't know. How do you feel about Bran the Broken being the king of the six kingdoms? Sorry.
Well, I I really don't hate it. Just because the whole point is that they were trying to find somebody who's gonna be smarter and end these wars, and I think everybody's sick of it by that point. So I get it. It just felt weird. That's the best way I can explain it. That it was unexpected and just kind of odd, especially the three-eyed raven going from I'm not going to be involved in anything that's going on, I'm just an observer, blah blah blah, to I'm going to be the ruler of the six kingdoms and protector of the realm. Like that's kind of the exact opposite. So that it didn't really make a whole lot of sense to me that he would take it, but like I said, I don't hate it. It's kind of cool that the Starks are ruling the Seven Kingdoms together now.
Yeah, and I like how Stark came up the biggest winner here. Like that was that was
Yeah.
totally for the fans. Which I'm cool with. I'm happy for him. But yeah, my thing is I'm kind of with you where I don't mind that Bran is the king. I do think he had a great line where Tyrion's like, "What do you think of that?" And he's like, "Well, why do you think I came all the way here?" I was like,
Yeah.
that's nice. That's a nice touch." And
It wasn't the only problem I have with it is that that was not like a three-eyed raven thing to say. That's not the way that he had been for the last two seasons.
I don't know. I think that is. I think that's.
But he went from like I'm the three-eyed raven now, I don't feel anything, to like yeah, I'm funny and I'm gonna be your king.
It oddly turned into a lighthearted comedy after Danny was killed. it
Yeah, it was
it
weird.
tonally shifted, and it
And it didn't make sense, but I'm also kind of okay with it because I was thinking, what ending would I have been more satisfied with, and I just don't think that there is any. Like I can't think of somebody that I would want to be king that I would be
yeah.
satisfied with.
I mean, here's the funny thing about what this season did, because at first from season 7 to 8, I didn't hate Sansa. I thought she was a good character. I liked her arc where she like overcame all this stuff and still was able to lead people. But there was a point where I was like, when Danny got there, and the way that she was treating Danny, of course, I didn't think to be like, oh well, Danny's probably gonna turn crazy. But the way that Sansa treated Danny, I was like, you are so ungrateful. She brings this giant army to help you fight these ice zombies, and this is what she gets. This stuff, but then you find out that Sansa was actually
Yeah, she was right the whole time.
she was right the whole time, and B, she was loyal to her people and was always every time she talked to Danny, she goes, what about the North? This is the North, kind of thing. So I respect her choices there. So in that sense, I kind of wanted Sansa to be queen, but at the same time, I was also like, would it have been that?
But she is queen, so technically that did
Yeah,
happen.
and that kind of doesn't make sense either.
It kind of makes sense.
No sense at all. That
I, th-
we'll get to that in a sec. But at the end, I was kind of like, maybe the Night King should have won. Maybe.
yeah, I I had that same thought. That's why going back to that just one more time with the Night King. I wish that they would have found a way to have maybe the Army of the Dead and the Night King like stopped for a little bit, but not defeated. Um, and then have them bring them in to be a part of this final ultimate battle where all three sides are kind of there in some way. I thought that would have been completely badass. But anyways, I digress.
Well, just imagine the moment of like if they made it a two-parter. Could you imagine the freaking cliffhanger if they deplete like a huge chunk of this undead army, and then you're like, you think it's over, and then you look out in the horizon and there's more, like dawn is coming, like sun is rising, and in the sunset on the horizon you see just a bunch of other like zombies coming at them. Wouldn't that have been so badass?
So badass.
Like, oh,
yeah. Yes.
There's more to this.
And that was
screwed.
what should have happened. With all the build up, like that was the war. That was the centerpiece of the show, in my opinion. There's one other. This is getting nitpicky here, but this just made me think of that. In that episode, I know we keep jumping back and forth, but
yeah, it's fine.
When the Dothraki first, like at the very beginning, when they went on their horses, you know, and you saw their lights kind of fade away, I was hoping that a few seconds later, a bunch of undead Dothraki were going to come running right back at it.
That would have been insane. That would have been awesome.
Like that was another missed opportunity for an awesome moment.
Yeah.
But let's get back to the final episode and how it ended here.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna, I was talking about Sansa. Let's get into that. So, also I gotta love the fact that Samwell was like, "Hey, let's try democracy," and they're all like, "Yeah, that'll never happen."
Yeah.
But instead, they were like, "Well, let's do the Electoral College." Essentially, was what it ended up being. But yeah, so we have the council. They all voted. Tyrion has this big monologue about Bran has the best story of everybody, and I'm like, well, what about Arya or Sansa or pretty much anybody here? But anyway, we go to Bran. You know, he has this huge thing where it's like, you know, he fell from all this. He became the Three-Eyed Raven. He deserves it. You know, whatever. And then you have everybody voting, and the moment that really stuck out to everybody that I've seen online, and rightfully so. When Sansa says, "Oh, I love you, brother, but I wanted this to be, the North needs to be independent like it was for thousands of years," to which everybody online, and myself included, was like, well then, why even have a council? Why even have a vote if anybody else can just be like, nah, it's cool, we're being independent, we don't need a king. You know? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, I think that one, it makes more sense for the North because it's the biggest sector, it's the farthest away, and it's the most different from the rest of them. But
yeah, I
don't know. I mean, I could see that if another kingdom wanted to go off on their own, I don't necessarily think they couldn't. It's just more about the trade between them is what it really comes down to, and the armies protecting each other. And I think the North just feels like they don't really need that because they have so many people up there.
Yeah, and they're so far away from everything else. Yeah. I just thought it was a little silly, but when I saw later in the episode what they were talking about, it makes more sense that it's like the United States, where all the states, we trade with each other. We're under one banner, and we all make trade, and we take, it's the same concept, yeah.
Or like the European Union.
Yeah, exactly. Where we're all trading with each other, we're all exchanging goods and helping one another. So yeah, I understand where that comes from with the Six Kingdoms, and it makes sense. It just seemed kind of silly in that moment to be like, I love you, bro, but I don't want to be a part of your kingdoms, so we're going to go over here.
I'm going to go make my own kingdom.
It was really funny when I saw on Twitter where it was like, absolutely nobody, Sansa. Bran's dick don't work. Response were like, he can't bear any children. Why is he going to be king? I was like, wow, calling him out right in front of these people? Okay.
That's pretty funny.
But, where it ended up, I also loved what Bran did at the end where Tyrion, at this point, and this is where people got nitpicky with Tyrion. We're like, what happened to Tyrion? He used to love to be alive, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, dude, the person he was backing and killed his best friend for because he believed in her so much just slaughtered people. I wouldn't want to live either.
Slaughtered a lot of people, including his best friend from birth, his brother.
Right. And yeah, he had that great moment early in the episode where he rips off the hand and throws it down the stairs. I love that when he's like, yeah, I saved my brother and you slaughtered a whole city. And he just threw it. And I was like, yeah, Tyrion. Because right then I thought Drogon was just going to like.
Oh, I know. I thought he was dead. And I also kind of thought that he might like try to pull out a knife and like stab her right there, and that Grey Worm would just like annihilate him.
Yeah, either way, I thought he was gonna die, and like Ashley could attest to that. When I was like, "Yeah, Tyrion, go out like a champ!" Like I was like,
"That's what I thought too."
Yeah, live by your principles. So yeah, Bran's the king, and then his great moment I think that he had again with Tyrion was when Tyrion pretty much was like, "Look, I don't want to be the hand. I don't want anything to do with it." And he goes, "I know you don't, and that's your punishment. You're gonna spend the rest of your life fixing all the mistakes you made." It's like that. I thought was a really cool leadership moment for Bran to be like, "I'm gonna show you mercy, and I'm going to make you pay for your sins," kind of thing. All right, I'll pause the recording, and we're off. Yeah, I just really liked that moment where it's just like, hey, yeah, you messed up. Now you got to spend the rest of your life fixing your mistakes.
Yeah, I thought it was cool. I think Grey Worm, he went from being like this crazy killer guy to like completely emasculated and no power at the end. Because he was just like, okay,
Yeah.
whatever, like just take him. We'll just head off into the sunset. Bye.
Where they could make up their own rules, they don't have to abide by this council. He's just like, fine, you got your king,
Yeah.
and you gave me this land. I'm leaving. Whatever.
All right.
Did you catch where he was sailing? Where he said to sail?
Was it back to where he was from? Where was it?
It was back. It was from where Missandei was.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Like Noth or whatever.
Yeah, Knots, I think. Yeah, which I thought was a nice little touch. I thought
Yeah.
that was cute.
Yeah. It all wrapped up in a neat little bow there at the end, I guess. So part I want to get to is Jon Snow's fate there at the end.
Oh boy.
I was a little confused.
Me
So
too. Yeah.
so he gets sent to Castle Black to be part of the Night's Watch. Where I'm just like, this poor motherfucker. Like, sorry, language. This poor guy. Like, he is just given the shaft the entire show, even though he's technically the rightful king the entire time. And he ends up having to go back to the Night's Watch at the end. But then he gets there, and there is no Night's Watch, right? Am I understanding this right? That he just meets up with the wildlings, and now he's a wildling, right? Like
Yeah.
like
I think the implication is that he is going to be the leader of the wildlings now with Tormund. I think that was what they're trying to imply. But yeah, it's such a I don't know, man. I don't hate it. I mean, I would have much rather seen Jon killed to be like that was his end of his story. Was he sacrificed everything for his family? Like that, I think would have been
yeah.
more
Well, and I
satisfying
always
end.
thought that since
But
he had died that first time, that he was kind of living on borrowed time, and I just assumed that he was going to die before the end of the show. It's kind of weird. It was, and I think they could have explained a little bit better what was going on. But I think the symbol there is that
well,
now that there's peace, we don't need to have the Night's Watch, right? Like there's no army of the dead, there's no enemies to the north, so now we don't need this Night's Watch. So let's just go off and
yeah.
ride into the sunset together.
My favorite response to that was when he said that you're going back to Castle Black to be in the Night's Watch again. And he was just like, there's still a Night's Watch? And then Tyrion's just like, oh, there's always a place for broken bastards and broken men. And it's just like, I mean, okay. But to me, it was just like, you're telling me this guy fights zombies, fights Cersei Lannister, rides a dragon, before all that came back from the dead just to end up back here. But I think they wrapped it up better because of that moment where you see Tormund when he goes in there. I was like, yeah, he's back with Tormund, so they could be besties forever again. And then he gets to pet Ghost.
Yeah, and he gets his direwolf back. Yeah.
And I think when he looked back, when they shut the door, and he kind of had a little bit of a smirk and he rode off, I think at the end of the day, Jon was happy because he didn't want any of this. He didn't even want to be like, the creators had talked about this, how he's a very reluctant soldier. He was very good at being a soldier, but he never wanted to do it. He never liked being
and a leader. So now he can just go off and be a wild man.
Yeah.
A man of the forest.
I think that shot though was beautiful when they showed Arya, Sansa, and Jon all like doing a suit up montage, like back to back to back. I thought that was really, really cool on how they did that.
Bran involved in that. That's one thing I was like, where's Bran?
Yeah,
he's a part of this too. Like he's kind of the fourth pillar of the Starks right now.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of weird. I wanted to Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, are they just setting up the sequel shows? Can we call Arya's
Well, I thought
Can we
they
call
were.
Arya's sequel show Coming to America? Because she's sailing
I
west.
like Arya the Explorer. And then somebody said if she's a pirate, Arya. But I think those spin-offs are supposed to be prequels. If I
Well, no, there's one that's going to be the prequel of like the dawn of like the beginning times where the like thousands of years before. But I mean, there are rumors of other spin-off shows too, so you never know which way they're going to go. It did kind of feel like they left it open-ended, like, well, we could do one about Arya.
Yeah, it seemed like somebody on Twitter said it best, where it was like one of those movies that doesn't have a sequel yet, but very much wants to poke at the audience. Like, I mean, if they would let us, this is what we would do, kind of thing.
That's exactly how.
But I'm kind of okay with that too. Like, I necessarily hate that but I don't want them to do anything with that. I like the idea that it's left to our imagination of how these characters live the rest of their lives.
I'm totally okay with the prequel going back generations. I do not want any sequel spin-off shows.
Because
I think it'll flop if they try to do that.
So much time with these characters. It's okay to just be like, and that's the thing too, is I'm all about like, leave it to my imagination. You don't have to tell me everything. Let me kind of make up my own mind about it in conclusion.
Yeah, I agree.
So another thing I wanted to talk about, the meeting with the advisors. That I really like that scene. I was surprised at how much this whole season in general. I was surprised how funny it is and how much humor was in it. But I really love that scene. Now I want to know, since you're somebody, I mean, who's listened to the books, audiobooks and all that stuff.
I haven't listened to all of them.
Well, I just want you to.
I want to say that.
Okay. I just want to know what you thought. Did you think it was too cheesy and hokey when he brings out the book?
Way too
and it
cheesy.
Says "A Song of Ice and Fire." I thought it.
I mean, I'll say I laughed out loud, but I still I just don't like that it happened. But it was funny.
I did too. I chuckled. I was like, huh. Because to me, it was just like,
wow, they actually went there.
Yeah, I was like, wow, we're getting really meta with this, huh? But I think it was pretty cheesy, but I enjoyed it.
It just kind of reminded me of like at the end of How I Met Your Mother when they just stopped giving a damn and they just did whatever they wanted with the show. Like that's what that part felt like to me. I mean, I didn't hate it. It was kind of like whatever, but it was pretty
really
corny.
Cheesy. I chuckled at it. A lot of people were like, "Boo, that's lame," and I'm like, "Oh, whatever."
It was lame, but it was kind of
funny. So I really liked that meeting because it was nice to see these characters end up in a place they should. Because I mean, Bran is the king, but he showed in that meeting that Tyrion's kind of the king right now because Tyrion's the guy on doing all the legwork, making sure these people play nice. While Bran's like, yeah, I'll try and find that dragon. You guys deal with this. I'm gone. So I just love that, Samwell Tully ended up in the position where he did. I love that they brought back Bronn. Bronn is one of my favorite characters. I'm glad he's still in there. And I thought it was all great. I thought it was fun. I enjoyed it.
It makes me sad. It makes me sad that Jon Snow's not with Sam, though. They're best friends.
Yeah, I mean, and they had that. I really liked that moment too when they left each other, and they're like, "You were the best. Yeah, you were the best friend I ever had. You were too." And I was like, "Oh, bro, cry."
Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked that, and we talked about the Stark's final moments. So I gotta ask one more question to end the show. But before we get there, I want to get your opinions on this because I feel like you're gonna be on the same position I am. To all the people out there who complained so much that you wanted to sign a petition to get HBO to restart this season, you need to grow up and stop being a bunch of freaking babies because the show that you liked didn't end the way you wanted it to. This is why everybody makes fun of millennials, you idiots. Second,
it happens every time, Jake. It happens every time a show like this comes to an end. Except for maybe Breaking Bad. I don't know if I heard any bad things about the end of Breaking Bad.
I'm trying to think of another one. The Office had a perfect ending. I mean, there's a couple shows that had a really good ending. But, yeah, I hated the last 3 seasons of How I Met Your Mother. And yes, I went and talked about it on a podcast and complained online like you're supposed to. I didn't write a petition. I didn't say CBS, I want my season back. Meh, meh. And then the same people, these are also the same kind of people that I'm going to go after who say, oh, man, I spent hours and hours of my life and this is what I get. And I'm like, dude, you could turn the channel.
Yeah. I mean, in the end, they got the greatest thing that's ever been on television. As a whole, Game of Thrones is amazing. And even if you didn't like the final destination, it was worth it for the journey that you got to go on through those 8 seasons.
I would totally agree with that. I mean, even if I was someone who didn't like this final season, I would have said the same thing. I'd be like, look, it still, before that, still supplied me with hours and hours of entertainment. And yeah, it's all about the journey. It's never about the end. It's about the journey you go on. And are there things that I didn't like? Sure. But yeah, I never have once has it crossed my mind to sign a petition. And that time that you spent to sign that petition, you could write your own story. You could write your own book if you think you could do it better. You know,
Good segue. I want to tell you how I would have ended the show, or what I would have done.
Sure.
If I were in charge of everything. There would have been another season. I'll start with that. We would have done full 10 episodes, so that you could have had the 2-episode fight with the undead army. There would have been a few stragglers left that would have continued on into the very last battle, which would have also been 2 episodes. And Daenerys would have done all that stuff again, taken over, been evil, but I would have had that be the very end of the show, or the very end of the season is her, standing on top of the stairs with the army below her. And then we get to another season of her and the evil rule and her plotting to go take over the other armies, and Jon and Tyrion and everyone having to reach out to Winterfell and call the banners to come fight against Daenerys in the end. That's how I would have done it. And I haven't thought all the way through what all the details would have been, but it would have been like, oh shit, Daenerys is terrible and evil, and now she is the ultimate enemy. Now let's figure out, like, these are the new unsurmountable odds that we have to go against her army and the dragons who we thought were on our side, and there could have been all this drama. It had more characters dying throughout the season.
Yeah.
And in the end, the last season is the song of Ice and Fire. Or Fire and Ice, however it goes. I don't remember.
Ice and Fire. I could be. I don't hate it, but I don't know if I would do an extra season on top of that. I think I like the idea that we expand both the Battle of Winterfell and the Bells longer. But I like where you're going, where I think you could have still done that in one season, where if you had, say, a 10-episode arc, the first 4 episodes are going to be like you could even do the Battle of Winterfell and the Bells like back to back, and then say that's like the first 5 episodes, and then the last 5 are the reign of the Mad Queen, where it's your idea where it's like, oh, he's reaching out to these other places, and like, okay, we need to get him in here and do all this stuff and have the fight.
Yeah, and they would have had to use, because she would just have anger and fury and strength on her side, whereas you have Tyrion and Jon and all these other people, you have strategy, intelligence, goodness, kind of battling, and they would have had to figure out like different war strategies to beat her. And I think that would have been really interesting. She would have just been marching on, And then we could add more of the clever Tyrion, the mastermind Tyrion that kind of degraded over the last 2 seasons.
I think what you could have done is with the Bells, you could say that Jaime and Cersei survive, and then do what you did to Varys, but do it with Jaime and Cersei, and they could still have their moment where they hug each other, but they're still getting the Dracarys. They're still getting burnt to ash.
Yeah.
And I think people might have been a little bit more satisfied with that ending than what we got.
Yeah, that would have been pretty cool.
Yeah. See,
I didn't hate their death.
I didn't either.
I kind of like the idea of like the house that they stole crumbling on top of them.
Yeah, and they get to die in each other's arms because at the end of the day, these two deserved each other.
Yeah.
Also, I want to talk about that a little bit too. The whole thing with Jaime going back to Cersei, and people are like, that doesn't make sense. Blah blah blah. His whole arc, and I'm like, no, it makes perfect sense because he's an addict, and addicts have relapses. And
yeah, Well, where I think the issue was the trigger was not super clear when you were watching it. Like the moment where he decided to go back, was kind of like I don't know. It took me a second to realize like why he wanted to like why he all of a sudden felt that way again.
Yeah, I could understand that.
Like it was just kind of an awkward scene the way that it happened, and I think that's what made it kind of weird. But I totally agree that it makes sense that he'd go back. I mean that's been his kryptonite the entire time. I mean it's his biggest character flaw.
Shout out to Brienne being an adult in that situation and not talking shit and just being like, he died protecting his queen. She could have been like,
Yeah.
and he also, the queen happened to be his sister, and they were banging. But no, she's just like, yeah, he died protecting his queen, whatever. Because I think it showed that she still, despite all that stuff, she still had a love and respect for him. Because
yeah. Well, and the scene where he knighted her was also one of my favorite scenes.
That was so sweet. That was so touching. I was like, oh. And then Tormund like clapping, and I was like, Tormund, you might be my favorite character. It's
I know. Tormund was awesome in this last season.
I love the side character. Like Bronn and Tormund are like some of my favorite side characters of any show. I love them so much.
Yeah.
So I guess the big question we have to end with is, did you feel satisfied
with just that episode, or with the show as a whole? How are we looking at this?
Yeah, I mean, just how it ended and the whole show. How did you feel satisfied with where we ended?
I'd say satisfied, not like over the moon about it, but again, I just go back to the journey that took us to this point was what made it all worth it. And I didn't hate the way that they ended it. It just wasn't. It was probably the least exciting season, or I shouldn't say that. There were a lot of really exciting moments. It just wasn't kind of what you built it up in your head to be, but it was satisfying. Yes.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. It had its faults, obviously, but I felt pretty happy with it. I was pretty satisfied. I think that it was a cool thing for me to see everything that the Starks went through with Ned Stark dying and the Red Wedding, and just throughout the whole show, the Starks just getting beaten down. That in the end, they're all leaders.
Yeah.
Arya is kind of off doing her own thing, but that's what she always was doing. But at the end of the day, they're all leaders, and they're all still writing their own story, and they're living their own life, and they're free. And I think that was probably the coolest thing about it. And there's a lot of people that were upset that it had a happy ending and it should have been bleak. And I'm like,
it wasn't that happy. Like 1 million people died.
Right? And like Theon was killed, Jorah was killed, Missandei got her head chopped. Like, there's still a lot of bad things that happen along the way. I think, I don't know why people crave bleakness, and I think it's maybe because it's like, oh, this is different. This isn't your average show.
It's what the show's given us in the past.
Right.
Yeah.
And I understand that people were upset about certain characters having plot armor in the Battle of Winterfell and the Bells and things like that. I totally get that. That is valid. But at some point, who are you going to focus the show on if you keep killing each other? It doesn't make sense. And you can't. It's going to be so hard to care about these new characters this late in the game. All right. Well, I think we pretty much covered everything we can. Like I said, I was pretty satisfied. Derek's pretty satisfied. Were you satisfied? We'll see. Well, let us know.
Can we satisfy you?
Can we satisfy you again? As I said at the beginning, Derek will be back in a little over a month to do the 1 year anniversary for Loud and Opinionated. We're pretty excited about it. Again, I don't know what we're gonna do, but we're gonna have fun with it. Talk about the things we learned along the way and how we've grown as people. And yeah, you can follow us, on social media. On Facebook, Loud and Opinionated. You can follow us on Twitter, @LoudOpinionated. I got to get better Instagram, but we do have an Instagram, Loud and Opinionated brand. All the other shows are up on loudandopinionated.com. Derek designed it. It looks great. And, yeah. I don't know what would be a good line to end on, like a good Game of Thrones line. You know nothing, maybe? I don't know.
I drink and I know things.
Well, let's do it this way. This is the best way we can end it. Be loud and be proud.
Amen.